Professor Cerutti is an emeritus professor from Politecnico di Milano, where he has developed the area of bioengineering, of biomedical engineering, being head of department, coordinating its programs, etc. A true landmark on developing this in the Politecnico di Milano. But then internationally, it's ranging 700 publications in this area alone, with an H index, which is, in the last checkup, it was 79, so it probably grew. That's absolutely incredible if you're around these things, and the contribution that Sergio Cerutti has given to our community, to our biomedical engineering community. There's some more interesting facts. One absolutely irresistible, which is, in his bio, Sergio has these two very big moments where he studies, does research abroad as a visiting researcher, and I was so happy to see that. One is in Boston, with obviously MIT and Harvard, and the other is in Lisbon. Okay, so Sergio, that was so nice. Maybe a great choice of country, maybe not such a great choice of city. I think it should be Porto, but still, yeah, that's very, very interesting. And of course, if you're in this type of, and we have the support of the Portugal chapter of the IEEE Engineering, Medicine and Biology Society, and Professor Cerutti, back in 2015, was the chair of the flagship conference of this society, which comes to Europe once every 5 years. It's worldwide, US, Asia, etc. And so in one of those small windows that joined Europe, Professor Cerutti, in Milan 2015 was the chair. So it's an amazing honor, Professor Cerutti. Thank you so much for helping us contribute to this European initiative, this blended program that joins 5 universities from 4 European countries, where we are discussing advanced medical and signal processing, biomedical signal and image processing, where we have this huge range of activities. We're going to visit an industrial, a unicorn on telerehabilitation. We're going to be online with Brazil, but this is the cherry on top of the cake. Thank you so much, Professor Cerutti, and the floor is yours.
Thank you. So let's try to make a condivision of my screen, if it is possible. Let's see. Do you see my screen, my slides?
No, not yet.
Not
we
yet.
See you.
So I have to. Probably this one. What about now?
Perfect. Perfect.
Fine. So I put the. Okay. So the full screen vision. So I think all the details are good. I hope that you can hear me correctly. First of all, I want to thank Miguel for the kind invitation. I would have liked to stay in Porto because I've been in Lisbon for a month period, but also I visited Porto for several weeks, I would say, visiting some colleagues in the university there. And so I have a good souvenir of the visit in Portugal and also in Porto. And that would have been a very nice opportunity to come back to Porto, but for many reasons I had some problems on contemporary meeting in Europe, and so I could not move with the agility which was required. Anyway, I hope that the interaction with the audience could be as successful as in direct presentation. The title is the concept of digital twin and artificial intelligence algorithms in biomedical engineering. I do not want to deal with some traditional aspects of biomedical signal processing, because now it is part of good courses, either in the bachelor level or in the master level, and also in the more advanced in the PhD one. But as I had I was intrigued by the fact that advanced processing, and so I would try to say something which could be different from the traditional aspects that are considered generally in the various levels of the university. And so I want to astonish you a little bit, because this first slide has nothing to do with biomedical engineering, by the way. It is the beautiful photo that was published on the cover of Science on December last year, of the photo that was taken by the Special International Station 400 kilometers far from the Earth, and showing how Hurricane Nigel was formed and did develop in the preceding month of September. It is September 2023. And so it is really very fascinating to see how this artificial intelligence power forecasting was able to point out what were the genesis of the hurricane and how it developed during the time. And so this cover puts in light that a new deep learning model could be used for weather forecast. And in fact, where do I want to come at the final point of my comment is to say that there is an analogy between weather forecast and health prediction. The analogy are that there are two basic methods to be carried on. Either the traditional approach through modeling or artificial intelligence approach to the so-called big data approach. Of course, the modeling approach is well known. For example, in Bologna, in Italy, we have recently, in 2022, inaugurated a high-performance computing center of the European Center of Medium Range Weather Forecast. This is this terrible acronym. And the integrated forecasting system is conceived to perform sophisticated calculation with complex mathematical models to predict the hard weather. And there are a lot of very complicated equations are put into play with a lot of nonlinearities, probably chaotic behavior. And as you know, all the calculation involved in these kind of things through computers are terribly expensive. And so a very big computer is required. This computer is one of the biggest in the world to make this kind of measurements on the Earth of the weather forecast. And so this is a very good example of how one can proceed. Put some equation, complicated equation, nonlinear certainly, strongly sensitive to initial condition, and so on and so forth. And so very big computers are required in order to come to a solution. Which is the other approach, the alternative approach, which has become interesting in the recent years, is the big data approach. For example, this program is called the GraphCast program, was developed by the Google group, and uses millions of data and 40 years of historical data of the weather of the Earth, and the 40 million spatial discretization data of 28 per 28 kilometers square. So the Earth is divided into small squares, pseudo squares, and of 28 per 28 kilometers square, and with the 48 parameters on each square. which kind of parameters? Obviously, the temperature at the ground level, the temperature at 1 meter, temperature at 2 meters, humidity, gradient of pressure at the level of Earth, at the level of 1 meter up and 2 meter up, and so on and so on. A lot of parameters of meteorological interest. And so for this very big amount of data, there is the possibility to enhance some important information for the weather prediction. And this program has surpassed the traditional system based on meteorological equation with an accuracy of 99.7% for tropospheric perturbation. That is perturbation which interests the most important forecast region, which is close to the Earth, and including the spatial station, orbital station. So this, I do not want to say that now we have to go on with the approach by the Google group, but because it's important to study the modeling aspects of the weather. And so it's important that the Bologna Center could go on to provide these forecasts. And how both systems, Bologna and the Google system, the GraphCAT, do function. They need input data of the Earth at the instant t0 and also the instant t0 minus 6 hours before. And with this initial condition, we could carry out a prediction of what's going on in the next 6 hours, and there will be an update of every 6 hours. And so we implemented, or they implemented, a kind of digital twin of Earth reconstructed by about 650,000 elementary square elements. If you sample the whole heart of 28 per with square of pseudo squares of 28 per 28 kilometers, you obtain this number of elementary squares. And so it's extremely challenging, and this could really be considered an estimation of the good twin of the Earth, because we could really put together a lot of very important parameters which contribute to the formation of weather and the development of the weather. If you go on the web and you digital twin, you do not see too many applications in the biomedical area. And that is not because there is no application. There are a lot of applications even in biomedical, but because the digital twin applications are extremely abundant, and there are a lot of applications in the industrial application, and so which are considered probably more important, or they are interrogated more frequently by the user of this motor research. And in fact, the concept of digital twin has nothing to do directly with humans, but it is simply the in silico reconstruction of the model as much as possible faithful to the real object. So we have here a motor of an airplane, and so we have its digital twin, which is a reconstruction of this motor, trying to replicate the structure, but also putting, whether in the computer, also some behavior, some possible parameters which could be used for the simulation in the usual simulation of this kind of thing. The wind room, for example, and all these calculations are extremely important for people who have to design motor airplane. So finally, we arrive at some application of biomedical engineering. The concept of digital twin in medical application is extremely suggestive, because we could in silico try to reconstruct not only, you know, the morphology of the subject as much as possible, but also some anamnestic parameters of his or her history, some anatomical functional characteristics, not of the mean subject, but of that single subject with its unicity, of course. And for example, the future of medicine are estimated to go along between two apparently opposing trends. One is the personalized medicine. Personalized medicine, as I commented in the previous slides, is an approach which goes to try to care that single patient. Not this one, but that single patient, to find out some characteristics which could be peculiar for him and extremely important to treat him or her. And the other approach is, of course, the processing of big clinical database, the so-called big data, in some sense an analogy. So we took the entire body of the subject and we, in some sense, discretized it, not necessarily in the form of the surface of the body, but in the sense that we take all the possible signals and parameters that we could obtain from the various organs which constitute the entire body. Obviously, this is a direction, this is a kind of new mentality also in medicine, but it's very difficult to implement a complete system in that sense. But, you know, the vision is extremely important to look along this direction. And the big health database could be important because of the carrying out of artificial intelligence program. They could be very profitable, trained on this big mass of data in order to find out, you know, the best solution. And I'll give you another example ahead of that. And another very, you know, synthetic and very, you know, anecdotic also concept of personalized medicine for the digital twin is shown in this figure. So we have here the subject, the patient who has a pain in the knee. And so we build up a lot of digital twins, twin of that patient, a lot of, and we could, you know, treat each of digital twin with one drug. Could be one drug, could be one rehabilitation procedures, could be whatever, an intervention, a decision that the physician could take on him to take care of his problem, in this case, pain at the knee. And so, you know, for simplicity, we could think to provide him a drug of this kind, or a drug of this kind, or a drug A, B, C, D, etc. And so we could see that in the silicon system, in the digital twin, we could see that the symptom, in some sense, could be released. It could be, in some sense, we could demonstrate that this drug would have success in decreasing the symptom manifested by the subject. In this case, that could be 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. The drug number 9, to say very in a simplistic way, could be the best to be used, and we provide this drug to the real subject. So this is the you know, the philosophy of the digital twin concept in personalized medicine. Oh, this is a slide which could help in some sense to people who are not expert in AI, artificial intelligence approaches, to understand what we are speaking of. It is not strictly necessary, obviously, in my talk, but I prefer comment this, saying that we could conceive artificial intelligence like an onion in which we have a basic part is artificial intelligence, any techniques that enable machines to solve a task in a way like humans do, artificial intelligence. Then there is machine learning, which is a subset of this big onion. And machine learning deals with algorithms that allow computers to learn from example without being explicitly programmed. And now many algorithms of artificial intelligence are carried on through this approach. Artificial neural networks are structure of machine learning models which are inspired to the way our brain generally to work. And so they are brain-inspired method of calculation which are implemented. Deep learning is a subset of machine learning which uses deep artificial neural network as models and automatically builds a hierarchy of data representation. The deep learning is theoretically is nothing else than a machine learning system, but they build up a kind of a hierarchy of paths which are more probable than others, and that is a useful example of how to make in such a way that computer take a decision on complex systems. The most used programs of AI, this is a slide which is already old after 1 week because the innovation in this field is very fast. And so I listed in the order of the percentage of use of this system. Number 1 is ChatGPT, OpenAI, Character AI, Quillbot. Many of these are for games, computers. ChatGPT is the most popular one, which has a very broad spectrum of initiatives and also of possible application. And also other Copilot we use generally using the Microsoft system as an operating system and so on and so forth. 2 examples of the powerfulness of these techniques. So if you use the Google DeepMind, a text-to imaging, it's fantastic because you could if you write an alien octopus floats through a portal reading a newspaper, a drawing or a snapshot is produced in which you see an octopus which floats through a portal and while reading a newspaper. So it's extremely comfortable to use these in the various kinds of application, but also in the medical area when you have to combine, for example, a medical record. So this is another example that I am really affectionated to because it is a robot understanding and reasoning as a human that you could find is free, available on the web, and which really has hit me the first time that I saw. And so I hope it worked. Let's see if you could see. Yeah. This is a dialogue between a robot and a human.
Okay. Professor Cerutti, we're still seeing the main slide, so it's not showing the video.
You do not show the video?
It's probably because it's in full screen, maybe?
Figure 1, what do you see right now?
Now it's in full screen.
I see a red apple on a plate.
Yeah, you're probably sharing the slides, And you probably need to share the computer screen maybe, so we can see that window with the video maybe.
Let's see. Okay. Should that be?
Cups and a plate, and you standing nearby with
No.
your hand on the table. Great.
Nothing happened?
Yeah, it's. I think the suggestion here is that you stop sharing, because you're probably sharing just the slides, and then you share again, but then you share the computer screen, and you put that window on top, so we can actually see the.
Can you explain
The
why
video.
you did what you just did while you pick up this track
What about now?
on it? So I gave you the apple.
Perfect.
The edible item I could
It's okay.
provide you with from the table.
Yes, it's very good.
Okay, okay. So I come back to the beginning. So it's a dialogue between a robot and a human. Okay. It's 2 minutes, so.
Hey, figure one, what do you see right now?
The question is, what do you see now, right now?
I see a red apple on a plate in the center of the table, a drying rack with cups and a plate, and you standing nearby with your hand on the table. Great, can I have something to eat?
So what do you see right now? I see a red apple on the table. I see a plate and dishes, plate and cup, and on a tray. And so the man asks, may I have something to eat?
Sure thing. Great. Can you explain why you did what you just did while you pick up this track? On it. So I gave you the apple because it's the only edible item I could provide you with from the table.
I gave you the apple because it was the only eatable item here on the table. And now I put this trash in this stress nest.
Great. So based on the scene right now, where do you think the dishes in front of you go next? The dishes on the table, like that plate and cup, are likely to go into the drying rack next. Great. Can you put them there?
So the question is, could you put the plate and the cap on the washing tray that you have on the table?
Of course. All right, so how do you think you did? I think I did pretty well. The apple found its new owner, the trash is gone, and the tableware is right where it belongs.
Okay, so that's it. So the question is, how do you think you did? I did pretty well because I gave the apple to you and I put the cap and the dish on the washing tray, and I think I did well. So we could now come back to my presentation. Okay, so it was interesting for me to show this because it's a good example of how even not simple tasks could be easily executed by a robot, which needs simply to be trained. So this robot had long training procedures to interact with food, with dishes, with caps, with forks, knives, etc. And so could be really, in some sense, trained like a good waiter. And this is important because it could be a good nurse for helping physician in many situations of Earth. But now come back to other non-traditional application of in biomedical engineering. This is another description of a research which in some sense scared me, really. And because this paper, which was published on IEEE conference with a very small number of subjects, by the way, so there are some intrinsic limitations in this approach. But the issue is that how it is possible to, from the cerebral responses, fMRI 7 Tesla, high field magnetic resonance of subjects reading some images, and from the fMRI activity try to understand what were the subject that the patient was reading. So it's a very challenging task, and so an almost impossible way to solve with traditional method. Instead, with some approaches of intelligence, artificial intelligence, it was possible to obtain some interesting results. Above, the images are presented to the subject in fMRI, these red boxes. This is a stuffed dog. This is a door in a wood. This is an airplane. This is a skyman. This is a clock, a chimney with a clock. And so using a model quite complex, which is described in the paper, and they use area of resonance divided into some sub-areas. One is yellow, which is so-called the semantic vector. It is in this area of the brain, while the typical occipital part of the image was used for looking at for the process of looking at the possible interpretation of the image itself. And so the model is quite complex. There is an orthogonalization process, which is quite complicated. But the most important thing is that they used this data set, which was the natural scenes data set, NSD, under 7 Tesla scanner, 30-40 sessions on 4 healthy human volunteers. Number of humans are very small indeed. But there are 10,000 images of different kinds. Well, with some constraint, the fact that there will be one basic subject. Here, the stuffed dog, here the door, here the airplane, here the ski man, not too complicated or too complex vision of images. So very simple one, detected from this NSD database. And so the image was reconstructed from the fMRI and used basically 25,000 images as a training set and 1,000 the test set. And obviously the test set was constituted by these 5 images, which were not presented to the subject before, just to be sure that there would not be a bias from certain point of view. So after this training, these 5 images was presented for 3 times in 3 different situations, in 3 different days. And so what was obtained by this stable diffusion approach, which is a kind of machine learning approach, is this is what they looked at. This is the image was reconstructed from the subject fMRI. So you see the stuffed dog. I do not know whether it is recognized or is it a stuffed cat, probably, and also the bow could be different. This one certainly by color, but also for morphology. So something obviously was not exactly the same, but you know, in here the small house with the door was recognized. Here an airplane was recognized, the ski man, and also the clock on the top of this of the chimney. So this is indeed a very powerful example of how this algorithm could work, could develop proper processes. More entering into application in medicine, here is another good example. The left panel shows an histology pattern of the subject, and here after having trained a system on histological pattern, the system has provided a warning to doctors to say, oh, please keep a look to this area, because I suspect, says the AI system, that there could be positive. And the doctors basically 17 over 18 did not look any pathological situation. The system has warned them up, and so they realized that the system was right. Indeed, in this area, there was a precancerous region that could be attentionated with careful. And so this is another example of how indeed the system could help in the single out the pathological situation. And so in Europe, we were the first, by the way, to regulate the artificial intelligence algorithms in the various areas of application. And the first publication was in 2023, and the last one was on last June 2024. And in here, we have a kind of pyramid of the artificial intelligence model, in which we start from a minimal risk, transparency risk, high risk, and acceptable risk. And here on this side of the triangle, we see that the common AI system, or the various risks, the impact of health, the impact of manipulation of data, the violation of the EU fundamental rights, which is the most serious approach, not correct approach, which is obviously prohibited. And so this is a general structure of how Europe intends to deal with, taking into account that basically up to now, there are very few the application approved by EU standards in the medical field, and so which would require a very serious analysis of this pyramid. But in some sense, we went ahead. So we have already the standard without many times not having the possibility to implement them correctly. And in fact, there was some criticism from the US to say, oh, you from Europe, you started too early. The technology is still very early, and so standards should be given later on. But this is a great story which could bring us quite far. And I'm coming to the end, and so I see that there are in any ways a recommendation on ethics of artificial intelligence. No doubt that ethics is a fundamental chapter of artificial intelligence, and this is a document by UNESCO. And this is instead an ethics guideline for trustworthy AI, and was issued by the European Commission. And these are advice ways of regulation of this subject. While the directive previously mentioned is one of the directives, so it's a mandatory character among the countries of the European Union, with some deadlines which are quite far away, by the way, in the preceding document. So, which are the main current limitations of AI compared to natural intelligence? Well, I listed some of them. Algorithms. The calculation tools are limited to algorithms that are being executed. There is obviously no superior reason. One could not properly speak of intelligence. There are some debates among experts on philosophy of science, experts of biomedical engineering, experts of medical field, to say that, but are really intelligent this system, or that they have learned a lot of information from the reality, and then they could produce information that were treated on, not producing more or new information. There is a big debate on that. But we know that also the structure of intelligence, the so-called intelligence system, could really produce new knowledge on the basis of the parameters. Big debate among technicians, physiologists, psychologists also. Speed versus intelligence. Calculation tools are faster, not certainly smarter. Creativity. Calculation tools have no creativity. Of course, they do not accumulate experience. Calculation tools do not experience things. They limit themselves to increasing their knowledge through statistical connection. In that sense, human intelligence is certainly much powerful than artificial one. The limited focus in their realization. At the moment, there is still no AI system with wide application range as typical of human intelligence. The system should be trained and should be indeed specialized and very focused. And so this is another big difference between a natural brain and between an artificial intelligence brain. The skilling is an important risk of coming from the implementation of these procedures. The reduction of skills and ability for men to perform a certain job, both manual and intellectual, due to the availability of automatic tools that in that single context can do better and without him. For example, driving a car, if indeed the self-driving car could have an improvement, decreasing or eliminating basically all the possible risks, certainly all of us will prefer to enter into a car and that's it, and to start the engine, and we do not have any commitment to do it. Obviously, the risk is that very soon we could not be able, not necessarily to drive a car, but maybe to use an electrosurgical equipment, because the artificial intelligence is doing better than the surgeon in certain surgical procedures. That would be very bad indeed. Strong influence of the trains. One of the most advanced systems in the applicative area has recently misrecognized two black boys. And indeed, he recognized the two black boys like a gender of animals. I do not want to go into details, but the artificial intelligence program, which is one of the most famous one, was compelled to excuse themselves for this very terrible gaffe and unfair behavior. Secure loss of jobs, possibly compensated by new jobs that could develop. Lack of transparency and explainability. Probably explainable. AI is now claimed to compensate for this aspect. And so if I see that my AI algorithm suggests to me this possible diagnosis and explain me why he has chosen this possible diagnosis, I could say, okay, it's okay, no, that's a terrible mistake, no, it's a nonsense. So in that sense, a more direct collaboration between AI and the natural intelligence expert is advisable indeed. And the last slide put lights greatly again on this comment towards the fruitful integration of the information obtained from doctor and the algorithm. As a virtuous example, we could report the Chameleon Grand Challenge competition within the International Symposium on Biomedical Imaging in November 2016, now 8 years ago. A deep learning algorithm was used to diagnose breast cancer, starting from digital images of biopsy of the so-called sentinel lymph nodes. The results obtained were certainly significant. The deep learning algorithm correctly identified the pathology for 92% of cases, compared to 96% for the experienced clinical pathology. Now, I have to say that in these 8 years, there has been an improvement in the performance, both of the AI methods and both of the well-trained physician of it. And in any case, certainly the surprise me, but certainly the most surprising thing in general was that the study showed that if the two observations, those of humans and those of the AI, were combined, the recognition, correct recognition, reached a value of 99.5%. So basically, a sure diagnosis. This is due to the fact that artificial intelligence and human intelligence make different mistakes. And if you can properly combine the individual observation together, they can be mutually, corrected. And so this is the final of my talk with the suggestion that we should be the driving element of this process of medicine and biomedical engineering, but certainly the use of artificial intelligence could be finalized to a better improving of this score, both for diagnosis and both for therapeutic reasons. And for that, I thank you for your attention and your patience, and sorry for the problems of the connections.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Professor Cerutti, for such a nice high-level overview of what's going on and all the aspects of AI. It sure is motivating for all the maybe smaller, more specific technical things we're going to talk about in this beep, but this creates an excellent context for everything that's going on and how we fit and where we can really pitch in. I think we still have time for maybe a couple of questions, so I will invite our audience to maybe seize the moment. Oh, there we go.
First of all, thank you, Professor, for very nice insights. I have multiple questions, but I would like ask two questions. One may be kind of a personal to you. I just wanted to know, when you started your career, in the biomedical research field, how was back then, and how much changes do you see over the years, and what do you expect, how rapidly the changes are going to happen again? So what's your perception with respect to this? And my second question is, based on your presentation, I believe we are moving towards the world where there would be coexistence of AI as well as human beings. And if we go along, then we will be on the we will be moving in the right direction. I suppose that's the main conclusion that you want to highlight.
Yes. Well, for the first question, yeah, I wanted to be a biomedical engineer even when I was a student of electronic engineering here at the Polytechnic. But my thesis was for many reasons on informatics. I worked on a PDP-8 computer, and which was programmable in Octave, so it was really very complicated. By the way, but I just after my degree, I started to work in the biomedical area, and so I started in working in applying methods for enhancing information from biomedical signal. Both the signal with the I would say deterministic information inserted, like for example the ECG, you know, cardiologists knew well the information where to take away from the signals, the length of the waves, the amplitude, the presence of extra waves, extra systoles, or whatever. And the problem was that to decrease the level of noise. But in some signals, like EEG, for example, the obviously the parameters were not deterministically provisioned. And so, unless you do the power spectrum of the signal and you see that there are certain spectral components in certain pathologies and so on and so forth. And what my specialty was indeed how to apply the best methods, generally quite complicated method that I derived from maybe the application in economy or application in other field of engineering, to apply in the field of biomedical engineering. For example, in heart rate variability, I had a good score of citation in these papers that I did during the course of my career. Even heart rate variability is a pseudo-stochastic signal. If you look at the signal of heart rate variability, you do not see precise morphological parameter that suggest you what's going on. You will need to measure, to make a kind of measure, either in the time domain or in the frequency domain, or in time frequency domain. And so that is the challenge that intrigued me mostly in my career. And I hope to have provided some contribution in this kind of things. Regarding the second question, are you so kind to repeat the question, because I have not understood very well? Sorry.
Yeah. So the second question was basically, I presume the main synthesis of the talk is, in future there would be coexistence of AI as well as human beings. So we will be going walking alone as a partners. Like we will be taking AI as a tools that could assist us in doing the things. So there would be coexistence of AI as well as human beings. So you think that's the way ahead?
Sure. In fact, even this concept, I am a son of my times. So I know my students who are extremely bright in the technicalities of artificial intelligence, etc. But my vision is that obviously we have to drive the process. So are not the algorithms which have to drive us. We have to drive algorithms. And so in that sense, we have to produce as much knowledge as possible in a certain field in order to have artificial intelligence systems which makes less mistakes and which is more suitable to the task. So I do not believe in the superiority of artificial intelligence in respect to humans. No, on the contrary, I think that the human intelligence is by far superior. The problem is that we have to properly program this artificial intelligence tool. And it's like, a kind of, let's say, that's a spectral estimation. If you do the spectral estimation on a noisy signal, you probably obtain much noise. If you do the spectral estimation on a clean signal, you have the right spectral components of the signal itself, may be related to some pathophysiological behavior. And so the same thing is for artificial intelligence. If you have a lot of data, not necessarily, even if my colleagues from we live in a department where in one floor live our colleague from informatics, then we live us who are biomedical engineers, etc. My friends of the first floor, generally I quarrel with them, and they say, no, you have to improve the number of parameters. So if you improve the number of parameters, that's it. The convergence is positive. And I say, but you could not put together apples with pears. And probably maybe if there is some correlation, the system is very clever to find this correlation. But sometimes it's not the case. And so you have to pay attention to the data that you insert into the system. So that's why we biomedical engineers are better than informatic people drastically trained as informatic persons to cooperate with physicians. Because the other point is, the third point is the physician. So you are not allowed, I do not trust too much to research carried out by engineers without any input of clinical correspondences, of relationship with the physiological or clinical profiles. I worked a lot with the physician. I published a lot with physicians because I think that our mutual interests really could be integrated into the progress of this culture. Otherwise, if you put four clinical or physiological basis into your parameters, it's very hard to attain something meaningful for clinicians. And clinicians would not, take you into consideration because clinician wants to improve their capability of classification of diagnosis. And so that's why I spend a lot of time to quarrel also, sometimes to quarrel, but to interact proficuously with physicians in order to convince them that this is the good way to go on in epileptic studies, in pre-surgical reports, in the follow-up after a serious operation, and so on and so forth. So I think this is the secret is working with physicians, but at the same time, don't believe in a messianic way that augmenting the data into the artificial intelligence network, you really could improve with information. It is not always this case.
Thank you, Professor Cerutti. I mean, we have time for a very quick question. Otherwise, I make just a comment. No question. That's 3 to 1. So I'll make a comment then myself, Professor Cerutti, because we're reaching the end of the hour that we've promised. And I was listening to you answer the first question, And I was reminding me of a conversation I had maybe a week ago with a professor here, Professor Aurelio Campillo, which is one of the, inspirational figures that crafted the whole biomedical engineering field here in Portugal. And what I was suggesting to him is that he has to write a book. And that book has to, because persons like him, persons like you, and you've seen these on a much broader scale, have seen in the first row and have participated actively in actually crafting this whole field. And I think that a book that shares your experience is not something of vanity. I'm saying I am disgraced, but it's something that will create this solid history of our area and will be extremely inspirational. The first question that was asked was precisely on that. So I don't know if you're doing it already, but here's a challenge to you. Please write a book about your life and your experience, because I think the whole biomedical engineering community worldwide would be very thankful for that. Yeah.
Well, I thank you for this question, because it touches me also in a kind of personal plans. And yes, I wrote some books, but obviously there were books for students, and in which I tried to concentrate when my first book was on digital filtering for biomedical signal. And then I wrote other books or edited certain number of books with themes related to cardiovascular application, to neurological interpretation, and so on and so forth. On the other hand, no, I have not written any book with the style that you are suggesting to me. And it is a good idea. Probably it is a good time of my life in which I could think of it. But, I'm always involved greatly in the current problem of writing papers, as usual, or reviewing papers, so I basically had no time to think of it. But you're right. I think it is a good idea, and this is a good idea for passing to the new generation the experience that could be really formalized in a book with a different style, of course, from the more traditional technical or scientific books, indeed. But it's a good idea. I thank you for your suggestion.
Well, we'll be very happily looking forward to it. But we have to wrap it up. And thank you so much, Professor Sergio Cerutti, for being here with us. It was such a pleasure, such an honor, so inspiring, and the greatest way we could kick off our week of intensive work, precisely on the area that you were one of the founders. So thank you so much, and next time see you. Let's hope we see you physically here in Porto.
Sure.
for a proper greeting. Thank you.
Thank you also for your nice invitation.
Okay.
Have a good proceeding of your meetings and conference.
Okay, thank you so much. Final round of applause for Professor Cerutti. Okay, so this ends this more open part. So maybe we can end the transmission, and